Hey everybody, session 3, we're rolling today. Thank you to Jason Berry and Dr. Michael White for that amazing immersion in jazz history. I could listen to you guys talk all day long. We have an amazing panel coming up, A Long Way from the Strawberry Patch, The Life of Leah Chase. We feel really privileged to have this one because, as you know, when Words and Music was first directed by One Book One New Orleans in 2018, we were lucky enough to have Mrs. Leah Chase on a panel about foodways. And last year we had an event at Dooky Chase, so we're really excited that in this virtual format, that relationship honoring Mrs. Chase's legacy can really continue this year with this new book by Carol Allen called A Long Way from a Strawberry Patch. Now, Miss Allen has previously written a book about Mrs. Chase, but she adapted that book to a YA reader, and that's with Pelican Publishing. So before I introduce our moderator for this, I just want to remind you all that that book is available in the virtual bookstore, which is powered by Tubby and Coo's Mid-City Bookshop. So you can check that link out at wordsandmusic.org. Also, to support the festival, if you love music, if you love literature, if you love Dooky Chase and food culture, if you love the fact that we're here for you for the next 4 days, go ahead and click on one of those ways to help us out and support us that are listed in the comments section. Thank you so much. And without further ado, Antoinette de Alteriis is the promotional director of Pelican Publishing, which is now an imprint of Arcadia Publishing. She is a publishing guru who not only led our workshop on Publishing 101, she's worked for Walden Books for 13 years as a sales leader. She is part of the crew of Joan of Arc and an amazing, wonderful, creative person who has dedicated so much time and energy helping Words and Music become the best that it can be. Antoinette, thank you for your work, for your passion, for recommending this book to us. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Megan, for your introduction. It's a real privilege to be a part of Words and Music and to be able to be on this panel. I've been a fan of Words and Music and One Book, One New Orleans since I came to New Orleans. And before even Megan was involved, it's been such a wonderful thing for our community. Today, I'm honored to have as my guests both author Carol Allen and restaurateur Edgar Dook Chase IV. After a career in public education spanning the roles of teacher, principal, university, professor, and superintendent, a combination I don't even want to think about, Carol had pursued a degree, an MFA degree, in writing for children at Vermont College. She wrote the only official biography of Leah Chase, Listen, I Say Like This, that was published by Pelican Publishing in 2002. The middle reader book, A Long Way from the Strawberry Patch, The Story of Leah Chase, the one that we're going to talk about today, was published this year, also by Pelican Publishing. Welcome to Carol.
Words and Music for starting off with this. I think that's a great tribute to Leah.
All right, I'd also like to welcome our second participant on the panel. Edgar Dook Chase IV is the grandson of Leah Chase. He assumed the reins as executive chef at Dooky Chase Restaurant in 2019. He's also the owner, president of Chase Concessions, LLC, a partner in Chase North, the premier food and beverage operator and management concessionaire at the Louis Armstrong International Airport, and the proprietor of two of their concepts, Leah's Kitchen and Duke's Burger. I'm sure there's more that he's actually doing, but that's a good start. He did study economics and finance at Dillard University in New Orleans, and he received his master's of business administration from the University of New Orleans, and then went on to a culinary degree at Le Cordon Bleu, Paris. In addition to his formal training, we all know he spent many years learning the craft from his grandmother while working in the family's flagship restaurant. Just like his grandmother and the rest of the family, Duke is active in community and civic organizations as a member of many nonprofit boards and commissions. There are two official cookbooks from the restaurant and Leah Chase. First, the Dooky Chase cookbook, which was published in 1990, and the second is And Still I Cook, published in 2011. Both of those cookbooks and the 2 biographies are available, as Megan mentioned, from Tubby and Coos, the bookshop partner. Welcome to Duke.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you guys could both make it. And I hear Carol rushed here from school, and Duke had to slide into the office to get some private time. So thanks for squeezing us in and being available for this to talk about the book. Carol, tell us a little bit about the new book, A Long Way from the Strawberry Patch, the story of Leah Chase. How did the project come about?
Well, the project came about, it started several years ago, like in 2009, when my then agent asked me to write a children's book about Leah. And I thought it was a great idea. So at that time, Leah was, of course, younger, and I went and spent some time with her, and she liked the idea. And so we started working a little bit. And for whatever reason, I wish I could remember why, I just put the book in the drawer. And here we are several years later, and Leah is getting older, and I'm more and more in admiration of her. And so I went to you guys at Pelican, and I said, you know what, we really need to get a book out for young readers on Leah. And so you guys graciously said, okay, you have 6 months to do it. So thankfully, I had written the biography because I had most of what I needed, but I needed more information on her childhood. So this book was actually written in partnership with Leah. This book is written by Carol Allen with Leah Chase. And she and I worked on the book together until just about 4 months before her death. So there were gaps to fill in about her childhood. And then with the biography having been published in 2002, there was just a lot of information about Leah out there, particularly since Katrina, that I had to start digging around to use in a life story of her. So in long story long, that's how the book came to be.
So I know there were some things that you learned. You specifically just mentioned some of the things since Katrina, but tell us some of the things that you learned about Leah that you share in this new book.
Oh, well, you know, the thing that I find, one of the things over the years, Leah and I have been, I've been blessed that we have been friends since working on the first book. And one of the things I've learned about Leah Chase is you just listen to her talk. And she will say something that will just be a one sentence, and it just covers a wealth of information, and it gives you an insight into her philosophy, into her thinking. And so I'm trying to think of some things. I remember one thing she said when we were working on this book, because of course the biggest challenge to Leah as a child growing up was that her parents were going to send her to New Orleans to go to school at St. Mary's. And here she is living in Madisonville, quite happy with her family, with her community. And she goes to St. Mary's, and then she's talking to me one day, and she says, do you know what I found out? She said, there's this lady, she used to make fun of my family all the time because we had all those kids. Then I just found out my mother was sending my sister over to take care of that lady because her 2 sons were killed in the war. And I wrote my mother a letter, and I said, what are you doing taking care of that lady? Look the way she treated us. So just in that one sentence, that's a page of the book. I mean, talking about Leah. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, I find it sometimes really funny. I knew Leah since just before Katrina, until the end of her life. And every once in a while she'd come out with things, and I took my interns there every year, and she'd say something to them, and I would catch it. And then I'd realize what she said, which was not always how it came across. And you're like, oh, there's a wealth of story behind that comment. Absolutely. So I think that's something you capture in that book. Your first book is the only authorized biography of this world icon. And I don't use that word lightly. She is most definitely a world icon. You spent 3 years working on it while living mostly in France. How did you end up being her biographer?
People ask me that question all the time. And it's such a simple story. I've known Leah since the 80s, but I didn't know her as well as I know her now until I moved to France, and then my ex-French husband and I bought a home in New Orleans, and I introduced him to Leah, and we became regulars at the restaurant over years. And we happened to be in New Orleans at the restaurant when she was awarded the Loving Cup Award. And she was sitting at the table with us that night at dinner, and I said, well, Leah, who's writing your story? And she said, ha, that would be a story to tell. So my husband and I were on the way home from dinner, and I said, I got to tell you, I would love to write Leah's story. And if I do, it would mean I would have to come and spend quite a bit of time in New Orleans. So he said, well, go for it. So I thought about it, and I called her, and I made an appointment to go out and meet her at the restaurant. And remember, she was much younger then. I mean, help me out here. This was in 1999, I guess. So I was very, very sensitive at the time about being a white woman writing the biography of a Black woman. And I had the fortune of writing a profile piece about Ernie Gaines that was published. So I printed it off. I took it out to the restaurant with me, and I met her, and we sat down to talk, and I said, Leah, and I have always called her Leah. I asked her one time, I said, what would you like me to call me? You just call me Leah. I said, Leah, I would like to write your story. And I said, I have brought an article for you to read about Ernie Gaines. I'd like for you to share it with your family and decide whether you and I could work together on this book. And so she picks up this article, and she looks at it, and she puts it aside. She said, okay. She said, you might get 2 or 3 pages. And that was it. And that's how we started.
Well, there you go.
But so to young writers or people who want to do something, just ask. You know, there's that old expression, you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, so. And it continues to surprise me that no one asked before and no one has asked since. It's just mind-boggling. So, Dook, you were still a kid when this book came out in 2002. It's clear how integral family is to both the restaurant and to Leah's world. I mean, everything is about family. Obviously, you chose the food industry as a career. How was it working in the restaurant surrounded by all of these people?
Oh, amazing. You know, there's not every day that you can work around your family that you love. And then after work, we go out and hang again. So, but really working under my grandmother, you know, we tell everybody she really taught us about life within those 4 walls of the restaurant, whether it was through food, through art, through just treating people with dignity and saying every person has a worth. You know, she really made it an emphasis to teach us more about the community than what we were doing in that restaurant. So anytime you had family, whether it was cousins, that was all our jobs growing up, right? You always started off bussing tables, taking out the trash, washing dishes, and then you were able to grow within the restaurant. But it was so much fun. And as a child, that's all you wanted to do was just participate in a restaurant, you know, and you'll see us running around the dining room floor. Probably some of the guests were probably like, whose child is this? But we had so much fun and learned a lot in it. So, you know, I can't, as you say, I went to culinary school, but pretty much everything that I learned in the kitchen and in a restaurant were from my grandparents and from my family growing up in the business.
You know, my first story from Leah about you, Dook, was Kathleen and Calhoun Nettleton and I came to lunch there, I guess 2011 or 12, and we hadn't seen her in a while. And we came in for lunch, and you had made the yams.
Okay.
And it was not what she expected. Right. Okay, so she came out and said that she was still mobile at the time, and she came out and sat with us. And Kathleen, who loves those yams, made a comment about, you know, they don't taste. She said, yeah. I'm going to take care of that.
And, you know, that was the beauty of it, and the beauty of how I learned. You know, it was a lot of what my grandmother, we don't really have recipes per se in Dooky Chase restaurant. It's all visual. It's all through taste, right? So I grew up watching her cook, would go behind her taste And then I would go behind her and try it right then and there. And her palate was so amazing that at any step of the process, I would bring it to her and she would say, oh, you forgot the cinnamon, or you forgot this, or you forgot that. And then she would clearly let you know, like with those sweet potatoes, if it wasn't meeting her standards, you did something wrong, and next time check with me before you send it out. And that's how I grew up, and that's the tough love that we had, but what we needed to make sure we can sustain those great recipes that she had in her head and cooked every day, and follow that through to where we are now.
Yeah, I think that's such a significant part of the books that have come from the restaurant, and also even these two books from you, Carol, is so much of this is right out of Leah's head. I mean, I know with the cookbooks, our editor-in-chief literally sat next to Leah while she was making the recipes, and she wasn't really measuring things, so it was a constant, how much is that, how much of that is it? So if you look at the gumbo's herbs recipe in the two cookbooks, they're slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because when you sit there with her, this week it may be like this, but 2 years later it may be a little different. So I think it's just so fascinating. So Carol, you wrote A Long Way from the Strawberry Patch as a journal filled with Leah's letters to God. What was the genesis for this middle reader format, and how did you capture Leah's voice so accurately?
That is about the nicest compliment anybody could ever give me, Antoinette, of capturing her voice. I wish I had a very scholarly answer to that question, but I can tell you that after I had gathered all of the interviews and the research and started writing, one day I read everything I'd written, which was in a chapter book format, and I thought, my God, this is the most boring thing I've ever read. And I literally put it in the trash and put my computer aside and went and sat down at the table and took my notebook out where all my handwritten notes were and started reviewing all of those notes and thinking about Leah. And I thought, okay, what is the biggest crisis she's having as a child? Well, it was having to move to New Orleans and leave her family. And I had written one piece of the earlier book years ago that I really liked, and we kept that as the prologue to the book. And then I just started writing from there. I don't know. I guess I would call it a God incident, but this letter to God came out, and it just flowed so easily. So I looked at my notes to see what was coming next, and it just seemed natural that Leah would be talking to God about what's going on in her life. And this was not far-fetched from the person that she is, because as Dook can tell you, there are crucifixes in the kitchen, there are rosaries in the pockets all the time that she was alive and cooking in that kitchen. And she told me one time, years ago, she said, Carol, I talk to God every day, and it's the last thing I do before I go to bed at night. So it just started to make sense, and it just flowed. So that's what happened.
So the title, tell me where that title came from.
Her. I mean, look at her life. The prologue starts with the kids picking strawberries with their parents. And the story in the family was that's one of the ways her father made money. The strawberries were put into 4 piles. The best strawberries went to the nuns at, what was the church, Dook? You remember the name of the church?
No, see, you put me on the spot. I do not.
I'm forgetting it too. But
of it.
Well, anyway, the sisters in Madisonville, they got the best strawberries. The ones that could be shipped, that were still a little bit green, they got shipped. The worst ones went to Leah's father to make his strawberry wine, and the other pile went to her mother to make whatever she made, strawberry preserves or whatever with strawberries. So when you think about, here's a woman who grew up in Madisonville, and the strawberry patch was about the center of their life, except for her father's other work. And look where she went from there. I mean, I don't know, that title just came, and I love it, frankly. I love it. You're not supposed to say you love your title, but I love it.
You can say you love your title. I like the title too. So, Duke, one of your cousins, and I don't remember which one it was, that did the mural at the airport restaurant incorporates the strawberry patch. Tell us a little bit about the art and how you brought that, along with the food, to a wider audience, both at the airport and I think you have another location now outside of Louisiana.
Yeah, so Chase Kamada is my cousin who did some of the artwork in the airport here in New Orleans, and Ayo Scott, another artist, did the mural too. So it's a lot of different pieces. And the reason behind that was the restaurant is called Leah's Kitchen. It's an honor or homage to my grandmother. And as many know, what she's done for Dooky Chase restaurant, and the main thing that she wanted to bring in, not only with the cuisine, was showcasing art and showcasing music. So any restaurant that we try to do or grow from has to always bring those elements, right? We have to always be a sense of community, a sense of art, a sense of music. And with that, at the airport, calling it Leah's Kitchen, I really on one wall wanted to tell her life story through art. And of course, the first picture does start with a young Leah in a strawberry patch, really looking down, picking up a strawberry, but also slightly looking out to the sky, right? Looking into the future, into the dreams. And I think Carol hit it so well. You know, I'm right here now as a child, but wow, look at what I've done. And that wall really curates all the way to the time where she met my grandfather. And then we talk about there's two pieces, the hands that fed and the hands that pray, because faith is something that's huge in our family, as well as, the restaurant. And then it moves all the way down to a mural of her in her kitchen, what it looks like now at Dooky Chase. And the last picture is an older Leah looking back through smoke coming from a stove to the younger Leah, and kind of reminiscing over her life and all the different things that she touched, all the people that she touched. You know, I'm very fortunate that that is my grandmother, but I mean, she was amazing, amazing woman. And I was, still grateful to grow up underneath her, to learn so much from her, and still always inspired by meeting different people and hearing their stories of what she would say on those times that they would walk back into the kitchen and talk to her. So that's really what keeps my family going. You hear a lot these days about continuing the legacy, right? It's not just me, it's a lot of us, because quite frankly, we need a lot of us to feel what my grandparents were able to do, right? So we kind of got to chop it down, right? I'll take this portion, you take that portion, and hopefully we can continue that legacy as a whole. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I think sometimes, just those little bites that everybody brings back feed us where, we sometimes lose where we are just because you're so close. I mean, she was your grandmother, but for me, she was just this amazing person I met over and bonded with over food. I didn't grow up around here, so I didn't know her as a kid, but it was just a wonderful thing. And then, over the last 2 decades, particularly the last 2 decades, the world at large has begun to embrace Leah. Well, not begun, they have embraced Leah. And we've seen her in a Disney movie. We've seen her, profiled at the Smithsonian. She's right there next to Julia Child in the American History Museum. I know you don't get any bigger than that in the United States. And I think they're finally recognizing the impact this family and the restaurant have had on the community inside and outside New Orleans. The restaurant's always been a place of inclusivity, as you mentioned, and has worked to raise up the community. Tell me a little bit about the legacy and how you, as the new head of the business, plan to continue.
You hit it right there. My grandparents and my grandmother, they built the foundation, and a pretty strong one, in a sense that they instilled that in us, but also they instilled it in the community of what the community expects from my family, right? So it's two things that we have to live up to. One is growing up and coming underneath them with such strong work ethic and faith, but also is when you go out into the community, people expect that image, right? They knew what Miss Chase did. They knew what Mr. Chase did. And how dare we if we come up short of that, right? We're going to be failing ourselves, and we can't, because I don't think the community allow it, or neither one of you will always say what's going on. So I think that part of it is really what keeps driving us forward, and bringing people together. And especially during these times, it's really bringing people together, and doing it in a different way while we're in a pandemic, virtual here. But it's just staying creative and trying to figure out those avenues where we can continue that legacy of what my grandparents built for us to do.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't realize is that your grandparents hosted the gatherings talking about civil rights, and it was one of the few places where groups of people.
The only place.
Yeah, that's true. The only place that had interracial groups having conversations, which was so illegal at that time, which boggles the mind now, but it was. And you guys actually operated as a bank because there wasn't an African American bank and people couldn't cash their paychecks.
That's exactly right. So the room you're talking about, and I want to talk about it because we're bringing that room back. Many people don't know that we have an upstairs dining room where we did host those meetings of civil rights leaders, both black and white, at the time, which was illegal. And of course, during that time, you're right, the African Americans had no banks, so they had nowhere to cash their checks. We used to cash the checks at the bars. My grandfather and great grandfather used to make loans to folks, different things, really. And doing that, I think that's what really, we're coming up on our 80 years next year. That's the community has helped us through that, right? We've been through different storms, different pandemics, you have it. And it's really been the community support that kept us going for 80 years. And I think we've got that support and gained that trust from all those great things that my grandfather and grandmother did back in the day. So I think, they won't let us fail. We won't let ourselves fail. And that's the beauty of New Orleans. We're just one big close-knit family in this city. And we cherish our landmarks. We cherish our traditions. And we want to see us thrive and succeed across the board.
Yeah, I think we all saw that after Katrina when the restaurant was so damaged. It was just amazing, the outpouring of support from everywhere. People who came to the restaurant years ago and just it was just amazing. So I think when we talk about that, and you've talked about being the inclusivity and all of this and the influence in the community, one of the programs that you did beforehand that kind of ties into this middle reader book is that you guys had groups of students come into the restaurant. Tell us a little bit about that program. And we know it's probably not happening with the pandemic.
Yeah. That was a program, and we still support them. We can't do it right now, but it was with the Silverback Society. And what they would do is they would go through the different high schools and elementary schools and get different groups, let's say about 25 or 30 students at a time, and come into our dining room, and we would teach them dining etiquette, right? And we would serve them a 3 or 4 course meal. So they would start with the soup, the salad, the entree, and the dessert. They will learn where the spoon went, where the knife went, where the teaspoon, this went with your drinks. And we would just walk through that. And for some, it was their first time experience actually going inside of a restaurant, which was exciting, right? And then we would walk through the history, not only teach them about how to dine, but really tell them the history about art and music and the civil rights and everything that our community has done. And they should be inspired, and they should be very confident in their life to do whatever they think they want to do. My grandmother always would have either people going out to the dining room floor or people coming back to the kitchen. She always wanted to leave a message with folks, whether through inspiration or work, and let you know that really, as cliche as it sounds, you can do what you want to do if you work hard and put faith into it. And that what every time we met with those students, and hopefully we will get back to that soon once we get over with COVID-19, but because you can see the light up in these kids' eyes, whatever their dreams was or thought was at the time, and it lights up to say, wow. She would tell her story as coming from the strawberry patch and being poor, and now look at what I have. And as you come into the restaurant, you see, the different presidents that ate at Dooky Chase restaurant. So these kids are seeing at all levels, from a bottom all the way to the top, that's something that's achievable in their life. So it's very inspirational.
Agreed. Now, I know you mentioned that you're working on reopening the dining room upstairs. And I want to go back to the art for a moment. We talked about the mural. I love going into the restaurant to see that amazing collection of art that Miss Leah has put together and that you guys are continuing to put together. And the last time we talked, you mentioned perhaps having a Leah's wall. How
Yeah.
would those plans move forward? And is there a wall space there? Because it's pretty full.
There is. We actually took some of the art that we acquired, took it off, and it's going on to the right and left of a portrait of my grandmother. And really, we're going to introduce it, and I'll give a sneak peek. We're going to be working with Stella Jones Gallery. And what that does is, and she would be the person helping us to curate it. And really, the goal of this is, when my grandmother first started getting into and acquiring art, it was really to showcase African-American artists coming up, right? And as we, over the years, acquired so much art, we didn't have wall space, as you alluded to continue that on. So now we said, wait, let's go back to what we really started doing in the beginning. Take a few of our pieces down, have Stella Jones go out and really tell us who's the next up-and-coming artist. So then we can start to fulfill what she started collecting for in the first place, showcasing up-and-coming artists. So that is going to happen real soon. I think we'll send out some announcements in 2021 as we celebrate our 80th years. We have a lot of events lined up, and that'll be one of them that we'll cut the ribbon on and start bringing back Leah's wall of showcasing those different artists.
That'll be exciting. So, Carol, for this new book, you had an original, well, we as Pelican had an original piece of art commissioned for the front instead of a photo. And when you did the biography of the family, yep, there it is. Lovely. When you did the first book, you collected a lot of photos from the family, and Katrina swept those photos for the most part away. They were lost. And I was so excited in 2011 to be able to pull those photos from the original book and give them back to Miss Leah as a gift, to return them to the family. But when we were looking for the cover of this book, there weren't any pictures of her. And I know you put out a call, we put out a call. They just didn't exist of her as a young child. So tell me about that artwork on the front and the decision to use the artist.
Okay, there's a little bit of an echo on my end. Is it coming through to you guys? No?
You're good.
Okay, so yes, we even thought about using a young picture of Stella and calling her Leah for the cover, but it just wasn't going to work. So I have a friend who happens to be from my hometown, happens to be a dear friend of Leah, happens to be an artist, and has written his own children's book and illustrated it. And his name is David Bertrand, and he is involved in the rice business in Southwest Louisiana. And every year he would send Leah probably 20 pounds of rice for Christmas. So there was a connection between him and Leah. There was a connection between him and me, and he was an artist. So he and I talked, and he started working up some ideas. And I must say, you guys at Pelican put us through the ringer. Nothing was ever good enough. But God bless David. He kept working away, and this is what he finally came up with. And we all think it works.
Yeah, it's nice. It goes right to what you were saying, Duke, is where she's the young student at her table, at her desk at school, and she's looking in the mirror and writing, and there's the picture of her as a grown woman, as we know that one. So it's a nice cover, and we're really thrilled that it worked out this way. So, Carol, you did a launch party for this book at the restaurant, which in a pandemic was interesting anyway. So tell us about the event, and then Duke, you can talk about the new mixologist and the cocktails and the food that you are now incorporating that sort of commemorate the book. So, Carol, you start.
Okay, first of all, it was terrific fun. And I thought, if there's anybody who can organize a group function in a pandemic following COVID rules, it's Stella Reese. And I think Dook would probably agree with me. She can organize things by the rules, and she sticks to the rules. So rules were in place, and people came, and they basically sat in family groups or close friend groups or individuals and stayed spread apart. And I did a reading, and it was quite emotional. It was the first time I'd done anything since the book had come out, and here I am surrounded by the family, and I mean the whole family was there. So it was fairly emotional, but it was great fun, and we got great questions, and Dook did his magic, and so I'll turn that part over to him.
Yeah, and I think on the food side, we just started playing around with so much of what you can do with strawberries, and so much of what my grandmother grew up recipes with strawberries, whether that was from drinking, her father making or having strawberry wine. So my cousin Eve Heidel, who is our new bar manager, mixologist, if you will, at the restaurant, created a strawberry wine spritzer. And then, of course, we had to have the strawberry shortcake. We did a strawberry salad. And, we just played around with so much stuff that you can do with the strawberry, just to kind of tell that story of how much importance that one little patch and that dream of a little girl really took off to be who we are as a family, and really spread and teach so many in the community. So it was definitely an exciting event. I loved it. I wish we wasn't in a pandemic and we could have had a lot more people, but we were able to pull it off. And I think the people who were there really enjoyed the story and enjoyed the cuisine, and especially the beverages.
Absolutely.
It was quite delicious. And I really enjoyed seeing we have a photo, which, once we get back to being able to do a little bit more stuff, we have the great grandkids all around Carol with the photo with Miss Leah behind them, which was really cool to see everybody, mask and all. It was fun. So, we're getting to the end, and we're going to have some question time after this. But first, I wanted to ask both of you what we can look forward to in 2021. So, Carol, you have a new book coming out, right?
Yes, I do. And it's quite a different book. It's a historical novel. The working title is Fever. My dear friend Pelican is publishing it, and my dear friend editor Devin Adams is editing it for me, for which I'm so very grateful. And it's a book set in 1853 in New Orleans, in the worst yellow fever epidemic that ever hit the city of New Orleans. But it involves a young girl who is the product of in that period, the period of the women who were placées. She has a white French father and a free woman of color mother, and she wants her career to be a teacher. So she tries to convince her father to send her to Paris to be educated, because there were no colleges for Black girls in the United States in the 19th century. And it's a battle, but she wins, she goes. So it's a coming of age novel about a young girl named Michelle. She's 15 years old.
Okay. We'll look for it in the, I think it's slated for the spring. So
it's slated for 2021. I don't know when.
Yeah, we'll maybe we'll see it at next year's Words Museum. So, Duke.
Yes.
You say 80 years at the restaurant really requires a new cookbook. Just
throwing that out there, Dook.
I hear you.
Perhaps with some of your takes on things, some of the new cocktails, some more. Just saying that.
That would be fun. But I think as we look forward into 2021, certainly celebrating 80 years and hopefully celebrating bringing people back to our restaurant and dining room and the upstairs in some capacity. But we also, I talk about family being so important, and many of my family either work in the restaurant or work in the restaurant industry or want to work in the restaurant industry. And my goal is to make sure that everybody in the family who wants to work in the industry has that opportunity to work for the family brand. So what does that mean? That means I have to really look deep and grow this brand and grow this business in a strategic way. I think there's some things that we're working on now that will, you may see a ribbon cutting at the end of 2021 that that I would love that will honor my grandfather. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil the surprise. But it's really looking at that growth in the industry and bringing all of the family members involved in a sustainable way. So there's a lot more coming from the Chase brand and the Chase family and the Chase Foundation. Certainly, you'll see us in the community supporting a lot of different initiatives, but definitely come by and visit us at 2301 Orleans Avenue, Dooky Chase Restaurant. We need your support. We love your support to make not only 80 years, but I have to make 100 and 125 years.
Absolutely.
A promise that I promised both my grandmother and my grandfather that I would be here to see the 125th. So hopefully that stays true. But it's event like these, that I'm honored for the book, for Carol to continue to tell my grandmother's story. I'm honored for you all to have us in words and music and just keep promoting us. And we'll keep doing the good work that we were taught to do.
Well said. So I can't really add too much to that. Thank you both for participating in Words and Music. We're going to have Q&A now. And the 4 books we mentioned, A Long Way from the Strawberry Patch, The Story of Leah Chase, Leah Chase, Listen, I Say Like This. Those are the 2 biographies. And then the Dooky Chase Cookbook and Still I Cook. They're all available through the festival partner, Tubby and Coos. So you see all the links hopping up there. So Candace, if you've got some questions for us, we can answer those. Can you see it, Carol?
I can. Oh, what a great question. I've been asked that. Should I read the question?
Everyone can see it. So
everybody can see the question. Okay. Since the book has come out, and I was very, very doubtful about the target audience for this book. In fact, I gave Pelican a chance to pull out. I said, you guys need to see what I'm doing because this is a little bit different. But we plowed ahead, and now that I have the book and it's out there and I'm getting so much readership from adults and feedback, I'm questioning, what have I done here? There's no question that the vocabulary, the readership is that of a young audience, but the issues that the book covers can be quite mature. And in that case, there are a list of I think there are about 3 pages of discussion questions at the end of the book. And I will say that I know of one school that's going to use the book in a study unit with middle grade girls after the first of the year. I pray that we'll still be in school then. And that's going to be a real test because that's going to be the first time I get to see young people interacting with the book. And the person in charge and I have already talked about a project where the girls will, in reading this book, then write something about their relationship with what Miss Chase is trying to teach them. And we want to then use that as an opportunity to share the girls' essays with someone so that they can get a little recognition out of what they've written. The main objective of this is to teach particularly young girls what they are capable of doing, because Leah always said, if I can do this, maybe you can do it better. She always said that. And so the biggest challenge of taking a book geared toward adults and covering them, I'm not sure I accomplished that, to tell this asker the real answer. I'm not sure it's done. I'll know after these kids get hold of it.
Well, I'm going to jump in and give you a slight answer. I think you have. And the beauty of it, my daughter's reading it now, and I've read it before, and my wife read it. And what you get from it is, we talk about it, and she'll get a perspective of what happened. It was one of her first jobs. And I'm not going to go in detail to ruin the book. But the message that my daughter was able to pick up was there. But we were also able to instill in a message that we know you were telling and my grandmother was telling, to kind of bring it all together for it. So that's the beauty in it. The kids do understand it, and they go down that path of the message that we're trying to get to them. And for adults who have read it or will read it, you can instill it further, that message that the book is saying.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I mean, I, of course, read it as a manuscript when I first saw it. And, as the book evolved, I saw Devin's edits and how Carol worked with it. And I found as an adult that the book was very inspiring. I don't think that it talks down to kids. It doesn't talk down to them at all. It also is not over their head. I mean, as you pointed out, Duke, your kids are watching it. And I think it was just a book that works at so many levels. And I forgot to mention that before, Carol. Thanks for bringing that up about the questions at the end, because it really does add. This is a great book for a book club, because at the end of it, you have these very pithy questions that are just for discussion and thought. And you could really take this in any direction. I mean, it would be really nice to have a book club at the restaurant with some cocktails.
There's going to be one in January. I've been invited to take one. We're going.
All right. Count me in. I'll be there. So I don't think we have any more questions. Is there anything? Oh, we do have another one. So, Duke, what is it like reading a book about someone that you know so well?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. But it somewhat brings you down memory lane, and not only bringing down memory lane of the portion of the life that I was around my grandmother, but really getting you involved in the portion before my time, and really knowing my grandmother that well, I can specifically see that would be her. That is her conversation. She does talk to God every day. She did pray for everybody. She would question, why am I in this situation? But also, I know that you're going to get me through this situation, so I'm going to go full speed ahead and get through it. And that reading that book that's the inspirational piece of it, because you get all of that dialogue back and forth between this young kid and God, and saying, oh, this is going to be a tough situation. I know it is, but I also know that you would guide me through this. So let's go forward. And then you see the end result at the end of this person's life, at all the amazing things she's done. So that's the beauty of that book, and really reliving some of the stuff that I was here and shared with my grandmother, but also seeing the times of growing up as a kid, doing the struggles, and knowing that there's always a higher power looking out for you, and you can get through anything if you just kind of put your mind to it and work hard and keep striving in the right path. It won't be easy, but you'll get to that end result.
I think one of the things that was so significant as we lived through this pandemic is, reading that first portion. I read the book again just to be ready, this week, because you get something new every time. But reading that portion about where she's sent away, and she's now isolated from her family. And we have so many students and families that are isolated at this time as we go into Thanksgiving, kids who can't be around their grandparents. Some of them can't even be around their parents, couples that are separated. But that feeling of isolation and how she dealt with that and moved forward in her life to overcome not just that feeling, but just almost, the constant challenges that she faced in those first few years coming back into New Orleans. So, it's so timely for what we're doing right now.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of it, and what you touched on in the book, and as a child growing up, that built her character, that built her confidence. And as you see in the book, going from, why did you put me in a situation I knew you would guide me through? And then you get on to her later in life, where she has been through so much and built that confidence and that character to say, you can throw pretty much anything at me now, and I know with you right there, we're going to get through anything and make it great. So, I just love reading that book, and I love hearing my daughter picking up on those messages. That's the beauty in it. When we come back and say, okay, so tell me what you read today, and she's able to hit it spot on, the message that's in that book, then you're right, this is getting through the kids, and I think that's what Carol wanted to do. So that's great.
Thank you so much.
All right. Oh, so what's your favorite dish at Dooky Chase? Oh, that's not fair. That's not fair. You guys go first.
Oh, it's easy for me. The Creole gumbo.
Hey, there you go. And I think, I love so many dishes. I better love them because we're making them. But the gumbo's one. We certainly have a red fish dish, the coubillon. the Creoles. I just love it all. You know, it's different times. We do meatballs and spaghetti on a Wednesday, which I love. So it's just, I think what you love about, or what we love so much about food, is the bringing people together and over a good meal, and bringing kids to the table, and really sharing these stories, right? Where I can sit down and say, tell me about your day. Tell me about the book you read. That's what we try to do at Dookies, is really create that experience beyond what we're feeding you on. It's just a overall great experience that we want you to have.
I think my favorite menu items are exactly those, Duke, the ones that have stories behind them. I mean, I love the catfish, but one of my favorites isn't even, I don't think it's still on, it's not on the menu anymore. It's the icebox pie. So I had to call ahead to get her to make it. But the story behind that is that she made it in the quarter, and William Faulkner ate it.
That's right. That's right.
And that just boggles my mind that these stories behind the meals. And of course, you know, talking about the gumbo and the hot sauce and the slap on the hand, that just really, you put hot sauce up there?
And you know, we're getting to, and really compiling a lot of the history was there. And you talk about the different authors and musicians, and of course James Baldwin used to be there, and we're trying to dig deep to see what he liked, because that's part of the stories that not only we want to have as a family to share with our kids, but to share with everybody that comes through. So part of that upstairs dining room that we are bringing back, and we're going to expand it a little bit, but the main part that's there right now will tell those stories and tell that history. So you will have who dined here and what they're like, and what author and what artist and what civil rights leader dined here and what they're like. So part of I'm not going to call it a museum, but part of that upstairs dining room will definitely tell you the story of the history when it was in place.
I'm just saying, that sounds like a cookbook. Just saying.
I hear you.
All right. Well, thank you both for being a part of this panel today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. The book, A Long Way from the Strawberry Patch, is delightful. I suggest it to everyone. It's a great Christmas gift. It's available from our partner, Tubby & Coos. And again, thanks for coming, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.